Russia's northern fleet just fired missiles in the Barents Sea. Not simulated launches, not computer exercises. Live missiles, launched from warships positioned in waters that sit less than 300 kilometers from NATO's northern border, during the exact 72-hour window in which a French NATO soldier was killed by an Iranian drone in Iraq. An Italian NATO base was struck in Erbil, and the United States lost its fourth aircraft of this war. The exercise window runs March 11th through March 13th. Today is March 13th, the final day. And Moscow timed it so precisely that there is zero possibility this was routine scheduling. This is Vladimir Putin telling the United States, NATO, and every Western government watching the Iran war unfold in real time. You are not the only nuclear power on this planet, and you do not get to redraw the Middle East without consequences. Let me explain exactly what Russia just did, why it is a nuclear signal, and why every military analyst in Washington is now splitting their attention between Tehran and the Barents Sea. The Northern Fleet is not just another naval formation. It is Russia's primary sea-based nuclear deterrent force. It operates out of Severomorsk on the Kola Peninsula, and its submarine fleet carries RSM-56 Bulava intercontinental ballistic missiles, each capable of delivering 6 to 10 independently targetable nuclear warheads to any point on Earth within 30 minutes. When the Northern Fleet conducts live fire exercises, it is demonstrating the operational readiness of Russia's nuclear second strike capability. That is not a drill about conventional warfare. That is a drill about the end of civilization. The timing against NATO's cold response exercise in Scandinavia makes the signal unmistakable. NATO has forces conducting military drills in Norway and Sweden. Russia has warships firing missiles in adjacent waters during the same week. Two nuclear-armed alliances, operating combat exercises within range of each other's forces, while one of those alliances is simultaneously fighting a war in the Middle East that the other alliance is actively supporting from the shadows. This is the most dangerous military configuration the world has seen since the Cuban Missile Crisis. And almost nobody is talking about it because everyone is watching missiles fly between Iran and Israel. That is exactly what Moscow wants. Russia's strategy in this conflict is not direct confrontation. It is strategic distraction combined with economic warfare, combined with intelligence support to Iran, combined with nuclear signaling designed to limit how far the United States is willing to escalate. Every element works together. Every element reinforces the others. And every element makes this war more dangerous than the headlines suggest. Start with the intelligence pipeline. U.S. officials speaking anonymously have confirmed that Russia is providing Iran with intelligence on American military positions, satellite imagery, electronic signals data, information about where U.S. forces are deployed, how they are configured, and when they are most vulnerable. 7 American soldiers are dead in this war. 4 U.S. aircraft have been lost. A KC-135 Stratotanker crashed in western Iraq after coming under attack. If Russian intelligence is helping Iran identify and target American assets, then Russian data is contributing to American casualties. Russia is not firing weapons at U.S. forces. Russia is telling Iran where to aim its weapons at U.S. forces. The distinction is legally significant. The practical difference is zero. Dead is dead regardless of who provided the coordinates. And Russia has a massive financial incentive to keep this war going as long as possible. Before Operation Epic Fury began on February 28th, oil traded at approximately $65 per barrel. Today, 13 days later, it has surged past $100. The Strait of Hormuz, through which 21% of global daily oil consumption transits, is effectively closed. The International Energy Agency has declared this the largest supply disruption in oil market history. Iraq has suspended all oil terminal operations after Iranian forces set 2 tankers on fire. The IRGC has threatened to set the entire region's oil and gas infrastructure on fire if attacks on Iranian energy facilities continue. Every barrel that cannot leave the Persian Gulf makes Russian oil more valuable. Every day the strait stays closed. Transfers, market share, and pricing power from Middle Eastern producers to Russian exporters. The Kremlin publicly stated that this war has caused a significant increase in demand for Russian energy products. That is Moscow openly admitting it is profiting from a conflict it is helping sustain through intelligence support to one of the belligerents. And then President Trump made it even better for Moscow. Trump lifted sanctions on Russian oil this week to offset the Hormuz supply disruption. The result is that Russia now sells its oil freely on global markets at $100 per barrel, while the war Russia is quietly fueling through intelligence support continues to remove Middle Eastern oil from those same markets. Moscow could not have engineered a more favorable scenario if Putin had drawn it on a whiteboard. Fund the war through intelligence sharing. Profit from the oil price spike caused by the war. Get sanctions lifted because the war caused an energy crisis. Every step benefits Russia. Every step costs America. Now layer the nuclear signaling on top of the economic warfare and the intelligence pipeline. Putin's Barents Sea exercise is designed to establish boundaries. Specifically, it tells Washington, you can fight Iran, but you cannot expand this war in ways that threaten Russian strategic interests, and you cannot ignore Russia's nuclear capability while you are overextended in the Middle East. The message has specific military implications. First, it constrains NATO reinforcement. Every NATO naval vessel monitoring Russian warships in the Barents Sea is a vessel not available for operations in the Persian Gulf. Every fighter aircraft on alert in northern Europe because of Russian exercises is an aircraft not available to support strikes on Iran. Russia is forcing NATO to maintain defensive postures on its northern flank at the exact moment NATO's southern operations are demanding maximum resources. This is strategic stretching, making your adversary defend everywhere so they cannot attack effectively anywhere. Second, it raises the nuclear threshold in the Middle East calculations. When Russia conducts nuclear-capable missile exercises during an active war in which Russian intelligence is supporting one side and NATO members are taking casualties on the other side, it injects nuclear risk into every escalation decision. If the U.S. decides to strike Iranian nuclear facilities, would Russia view that as crossing a red line? If NATO invokes Article 5 after a French soldier's death and expands military operations against Iranian proxies in Iraq, does Russia respond by escalating its own posture? If Israel uses tactical nuclear weapons against deeply buried Iranian targets, does Russia treat that as normalizing nuclear use in a way that threatens its own security calculations? Every one of these questions now factors into American decision-making because Russian warships are firing missiles 300 kilometers from NATO territory while this war rages. Third, it signals to China. Beijing is watching this conflict with intense strategic interest. China condemned the use of force at the UN Security Council and called crossing civilian red lines shocking. Chinese vessels continue to transit the Strait of Hormuz while Arab exporters are effectively blocked, meaning China is maintaining its own oil imports while competing economies face shortages. Russia's nuclear signaling tells Beijing that Moscow is willing to raise the stakes against American power projection. That signals solidarity between the two powers that Washington fears most, and it suggests coordinated strategic pressure that extends far beyond the Middle East. The NATO fracture lines are already visible. France lost its first soldier today. President Macron confirmed the death of a French service member wounded in a drone strike at Malakara in Iraqi Kurdistan. 6 French soldiers were wounded in the same attack. On the same day, an Iranian drone struck an Italian military vehicle at a base in Erbil. 2 founding NATO members took direct Iranian fire in a single 24-hour period. Article 5 has not been invoked, but the internal discussions are happening in every NATO capital right now, and Russia knows that those discussions divide rather than unite the alliance. NATO Secretary General Mark Rutte said Europe is supportive of the U.S. attacks on Iran. EU Commission President von der Leyen has reportedly expressed support for regime change in Iran, but the UK is limiting itself to defensive aircraft deployments in Qatar, Jordan, Iraq, and Cyprus. Britain is not participating in offensive operations. Germany has made no military commitments. Spain has made no military commitments. The alliance is rhetorically supportive and operationally fragmented. Russia's nuclear exercises deepen that fragmentation by reminding European NATO members that their primary security threat is not Iran. It is Russia. And Russia is right there, on Europe's border, firing missiles, while Europe's American protector is consumed by a Middle Eastern war that grows wider every day. Putin does not need to fire a single shot at an American soldier. The strategy is more sophisticated than that. Provide intelligence to Iran so Iranian weapons kill American soldiers. Profit from the oil crisis the war creates. Get sanctions lifted because the oil crisis demands Russian supply. Fire nuclear-capable missiles in NATO's backyard to constrain Western escalation options. Watch NATO fracture as member states take casualties in a war they did not choose. And sit back while the United States spends billions of dollars per day prosecuting a campaign that makes Russia richer and America more isolated with each passing hour. The Pentagon acknowledged today that it significantly underestimated Iran's willingness to close the Strait of Hormuz. Did the Pentagon also underestimate Russia's willingness to exploit this war at every level? Because the exploitation is happening in real time. Intelligence flows to Tehran, oil revenue flows to Moscow, nuclear signals radiate from the Barents Sea, and NATO cohesion erodes with every flag-draped coffin arriving at military airports in Paris and Rome. Iran's new supreme leader, Mojtaba Khamenei, demands American bases close. Russia fires missiles near NATO's border. Iran attacks 6 countries in a single day. Russia profits from the resulting energy chaos. A French soldier dies. An Italian base is struck. The President of the United States says the war is pretty much complete, and then says, "We haven't won enough." And through all of it, Russian submarines carrying nuclear warheads patrol waters that are closer to London, Paris, and Washington than Tehran is to Tel Aviv. The Iran war is not a bilateral conflict between the United States and Iran. It is not even a regional war involving Israel, Lebanon, and the Gulf states. It is a global strategic confrontation in which Russia is using every tool short of direct combat, intelligence, energy, nuclear signaling, diplomatic obstruction at the UN Security Council, and financial exploitation to ensure that America pays the maximum price for this campaign, while Russia extracts the maximum benefit. Putin's message is not subtle. It is written in missile exhaust trails over the Barents Sea, in intelligence packets transmitted to Iranian military commanders, in $100 per barrel oil prices that fill Russian government accounts, and in the growing list of NATO casualties that test alliance solidarity with each new name. Stay out is not what Putin is saying. Putin is saying something far more calculated. Keep going. Stay in. Fight longer. Bleed more. Spend more. Stretch thinner. Because every day this war continues, Russia gets stronger and America gets weaker. The missiles in the Barents Sea are not a warning to stop. They are a guarantee that Russia will keep profiting from every day the United States refuses to stop. Day 13 ends with Russian warships returning to port after 3 days of live-fire exercises. Day 14 begins with those same submarines still on patrol, still carrying nuclear warheads, still watching, still waiting, and still reminding the world that the most dangerous player in this war is the one who is not officially fighting it.